Hi, Serena. Welcome to these mini podcasts at the NAAEE Conference. It's great
Thank
to
you for
have you.
having me. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. So have you given? I'm sort of behind on all the sessions and things. Have you given your session yet?
Yes, I gave my session on Tuesday.
Tuesday. It was probably while I was in the middle of doing one of these little podcasts with someone else. So how did it go?
It was amazing. The crowd was amazing. The comments were motivating me to keep telling my story. It's just nice to be around educators who really care about what they do.
Oh,
So it was inspiring for me too.
that's wonderful. You know, that's the in. I've been to a number of the conferences, especially when they're live, and that's one of the things I come away from there. Like I'm on an energy high the whole time. Like, okay, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. I don't know if they're good for my health or bad for my health.
Maybe a little bit of both because it adds a little bit of pressure, right? It also adds a little pressure to me. Like, am I doing enough?
That's exactly how I feel, and especially I'm sure this is your experience at some of these, and especially since you work with young people, it's you see how much energy and passion they have, and it's like, no, I have to do more. You
That's
know?
right.
Yeah.
It puts
Um,
that energy, that fire underneath your feet because if they can do it at such young ages, what are we doing?
well, wait a second. I just watched a video and talking about. I saw this little girl with sort of lemony yellow bows in her hair. I think you were doing a lot when you were a young woman. I
I
was.
tried, I have to credit my dad. He used to make us read. And I always tell my students that I say, one thing no one can take from you is your education. So
Exactly.
read everything. Really invest your time and energy into understanding the unknowns that are in front of you. And I think that my dad instilled that in me, and I instill that in my students.
I really connected to. I can't remember which one of the videos it was now, the title, but I really connected to. You were talking about your dad and talking about reading and you going off to the library, and I connected to it because my dad worked in a clinic full of medical people, which is where you kind of ended up moving at one point in your career. And I would ask him questions, and he would bring home medical books to me and say science books, and say, "Okay, here it is." And I all of my early education came a very similar way. It was like, what can we find in these books? So read especially about science. It became a really powerful tool. So I was
And
excited.
asking questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest tool that is underutilized by young people.
Mm.
Ask a million questions because even if you don't get the answer to the exact question that you're asking, you're going to gain some knowledge. And even if the knowledge isn't perfect, you can then ask another question to keep getting more answers.
That makes me think of two things. One is the I pulled a little piece off of the program that you were actually doing because you were kind of stepping through your steps, and I smiled as you were doing it because I thought you were applying the scientific method to your own life right
I
out of
did.
the gate. I wanted to ask you, did you realize that you were applying the scientific method, or was it just like this made such
Yeah.
sense to you to do it this way?
I'm really logical, and I don't know if that's always good because I think being creative is also phenomenal,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm really logical. And if I know that there's a stepwise process to attain a solution, I always tend to gravitate towards that.
Mm-hmm.
And the scientific method honestly speaks to everyone. It's really just asking a question, doing some background research, stating a goal for yourself, and then really applying, different tasks to see if your goal is attainable.
Mm-hmm.
And the scientific method works, in my opinion, for everything. For
Yeah.
everything. So
Well,
I did that talk that you're talking about using
mm-hmm.
the scientific method intentionally because I was speaking to young people and I wanted
Oh,
them to
okay.
see that the scientific method is applicable in your daily life and it will change and you'll have new questions and you can revise your question and that's okay. Nothing is set in stone and mistakes come along the way. And it's okay if you make mistakes as long as you figure out why.
Exactly. And that was the other piece of that that I loved, because you were, those mistakes are where we learn. And I think sometimes it's frightening when you're young, because you think, no, I want to do this right. That we put so much emphasis on getting the correct answer, making that thing right, and that's not how science works. I was speaking in one of the other of these podcasts with Christina Verisan from California, and she does a whole program on combining art and science, and we were talking about how science is really art.
It
You
is.
have to have that creative,
You do.
just take that chance, run off, and
All,
you
100%.
yeah.
All of my students who we do research projects, and I'm talking high level, high impact research, I always say to them, you need a visual. You need a picture. You need something, because 85% of the population learns by visuals. So if you have a visual, it actually helps them make sense of the complexities that they're trying to work through. And I sometimes make them use the visual for their presentations, but in essence, and they don't know this, so surprise, that I'm actually making them make the visual so that they can see where they have gaps in their understanding. And actually, when they start making the visual, it doesn't make sense to them. And then I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make sense because you're missing this piece of the science. You're missing this piece of the science. You're missing this piece of the science. And then eventually the picture comes to a whole picture where it totally makes sense to them. So sometimes it's just about how you approach the question and how you ask others to approach the question that can bring clarity or not to the situation. And I think that one of the big things is what you said. It's creativity. Now take, even I have some of them just with a pen draw a picture. They're always so quick. They're going to the computer, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to use ChatGPT. Chat is going to give you a very general view of what you are really doing. Specifically, if they're doing something that's novel, it's going to give them such a small piece of a big picture that if they just try to use something from AI, it's not going to really address their problem. So just do it by pen, and then eventually making it a more, virtual, digitized image that will come.
Yeah. And that it's almost my background is filmmaking and storytelling, and I've worked over my decades with a lot of scientists in the field, conservation scientists, research scientists, especially around great apes and things. And that's always the challenge working, I think, with scientists and teaching young students is think of it as storytelling. I always talk to them as think of it as storytelling, and that's what I also loved about your video is you were taking people on a story about this incredible woman, Serena, and her journey of discovery, her journey of mistakes. Like your comments about being in the hospital and going, no, this is not what I want to do.
And it's funny. It was all my life. I thought I wanted to be a doctor until I got to college, and then realized, this is not what I wanted to do. Yeah. And like you said, and again, I tell my students this, even their research is storytelling. It is literally, what is the beginning? What's the middle? What's the end? What was the question that started it all? How did you fill in the gaps to that story? That's the middle. What was the experimentation? The middle. And then what's the conclusion? That's the end. And if they think of it as if they're telling a story, it becomes so comprehensive to even people without science backgrounds that they really soar. And that's the goal, right? We want to share science in a way that it's applicable to the masses, not just to a bunch of other PhDs who are going to get the small pieces. You want everyone to understand why what you're doing is going to change the world. And if they can't tell a good story, nobody's going to listen to how they're going to change the world, which is what we want them to know. Yeah. So a large part, and I always say this to my kids, is 50% the science and 50% the sell.
Absolutely.
And once they get that, they are that's how we have become the leaders in some of these high stakes competitions, being published in white papers that high school kids are not used to being published in. It's all because they become great storytellers who understand complex science.
Exactly. And it's the thing where I have another podcast that they do. It's called Talking Apes, and so we're a lot of paleoanthropologists and biologists and researchers, and some of the best guests on there are the scientists who know how to tell stories about what they do. I'm thinking of one, Brianna Pobiner down at the Smithsonian Institute, and she's the director of the Hall of Human Origins, but she's won so many awards for being a great science communicator, and that is something that I am sure you know really well, and
I think it should be taught in colleges. I remember
exactly.
we went to, because if I'm being honest, I have students who have gone to some of the best universities. You can see on my wall, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and it's not until they're in their junior year where they're really exposed to science communication, and it's too late. I feel like we should start it in high school, start it earlier. I think that it should be mandated, if you're going to have an undergraduate degree in science, that you've taken science communication courses. I was at a competition where, again, my students are doing so well, and the dean of one of the science departments came up to me. He was like, "Can you please come talk to my graduate students?" He said, "How your students are able to communicate complex science simply is a skill that they lack." And he was like, "You should come talk to them, train them on how to explain these complex processes simply." And I said, it's kind of sad that he's saying his graduate students can't do something that my high school students were able to learn and master in high school. So I definitely think that there's a gap in science where they're ignoring, and partially I tend to believe this true, that it's almost intentional, that it's a way to show that science is hard by saying it in a difficult way.
Right.
And that's not fair, because science is for everybody. Everyone should be able to understand biology, chemistry, physics, astronomy, biophysics, and not be afraid of it. But it's actually how it's being communicated that makes it scary.
We live it every day. It is our lives. Science is, and you're right, they need to be able to communicate, and I think it is a huge gap, and that's part of what's maybe wrong with a bit of our society these days, is because we like, look how few scientists are in the Congress. They're politicians, but there are very few science backgrounds. So when these issues have to be decided, and some of them at the voting box, your students are prepared to make those decisions. They can
Yes,
weigh
but this is
ideas.
such a small population of kids who actually get it. Because again, I think we frighten them in middle school that science is hard. I was told by so many people when I was in high school, "You sure you want to do science?" And I'm like, yeah. So I literally, thank God that I have a passion for it and a desire to know more. I literally had to find out about programs and things to engage in science on my own in high school, because my counselors were like, "Oh, I don't know if science is for you. You don't even know me. How do you know it's not for me?" And I think that we frighten kids from doing the heavy lift that currently exists when it comes to learning more about science. And we have to make sure that kids know, don't be afraid of it. It's just words. It's just like speaking another language. If you can speak English, you can speak science.
Right. Serena, how many of your students, like roughly, are young women?
I have to be honest, the numbers have increased dramatically. More than half of my students are now women.
Is it?
I think.
Go ahead. No, I was going to ask you why you think that. Yeah.
I think it's because they have role models now that are scientists. I think COVID-19 really opened the door for women to show how great we are and what we're doing in science. I think that a lot of people were tuned in to social media and LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok, and women really stepped up and tried to explain the complexities of the disease rather than sitting in the fear. And that literally had other women saying, "Hey, there are microbiologists out there, virologists out there, doctors that I didn't even know existed." And now they see people who look like them. And now I think that is allowing them to take charge. More and more high school students that I work with at iResearch and the Hidden Prodigy Project are women. The girls are coming up, hitting me up in my LinkedIn. Hey, how do I get in your programs?
Right.
How do I do research? How do I start? It's because they're seeing women. You can't do it sometimes if you don't see it. There's very few people that have the drive and motivation to achieve in areas where they don't see people who are achieving that look like them.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
I didn't have a strong mentorship.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I was lucky that I had dad and friends and guidance from people who were not scientists, but literally were like my cheerleaders in the background saying, hey, you want to go work in a hospital after school? Do it. And it wasn't, honestly, my education. It wasn't my educators. It was the outsiders that were saying, hey, you're driven. Go do that thing. And then them cheering me on in the background said, okay, you don't know anything about science, but I can learn it and go for it.
How much? I know you get out. Just in the bit of research that I looked at your site and other things, I know you're out public speaking a lot. How big an influence do you think that has on these young women, seeing you up there doing what you're doing, and also your story about not having? I mean, because your parents were first generation coming to the, or well, you're first generation, I guess, but they came to the United States. They immigrated here, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
From where from?
Jamaica and Panama.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So West Indian culture is always driven in hard work, will give you, allow you to reap the rewards that you seek. And one of the things was, again, my parents, no science background. My dad was really good in math, but not really, he wasn't college educated, but he was really good in math. He just said to me, listen, ask your questions, but I don't have the answers. Go get them.
Yeah.
And he would force us to go. When I was a kid, I used to have to go to the library, and I would sit in the library for hours and just read about biology and the questions that I had about the universe and animals and the environment. And it was him pushing me to go to the library that opened my eyes to reading. One thing he also did, he made us write book reports. So me and my siblings, we didn't get to just sit around and do nothing all summer. If we weren't in a camp, because camps are expensive, he would make us write a book report for him once a week. So mandated, I had to read a book a week and then write about it. And honestly, it was probably one of the best things he ever did for us, because that reading pushed me to have a voice about the world. And the National Geographic magazines that he paid for us to receive, they actually opened my eyes about things that I wouldn't have explored otherwise. So it's just like you were asking me originally, your original question was, how much do you think my talks and seeing me makes an impact? I think it makes a huge impact because I get to share with them. I didn't always have it easy. There wasn't always someone walking me through this process.
Right.
I had to figure out, how was I going to get from A to B to C? And reading helped to get me there.
Yeah. But just the sheer impact of seeing a woman of color in science. That's just, science and engineering has been like, off limit. And just to see, I know, I was talking to somebody the other day about the impact, because Jane Goodall died recently, and talking about the impact that it's had on primatology of all the young women, because they saw her.
Yes.
And they said, if she can do it, why can't
I can
do it? I can go to these places. I can go to some other country. I can go to these forests, and I can sit there and I can do research and work. And I must think the same thing is going on when I'm sitting in the audience as I'm a young black woman and I'm looking up for a little girl and thinking, I can do that.
Yes.
She's like, yeah. And especially
it's possible.
Yeah.
I just became a National Geographic Young Explorer mentor. And the one thing that my girls said to me was that you empowered us.
Wow.
It's priceless. That's priceless to hear. And like that, them seeing it's possible is empowering them to reach heights that they haven't thought that they could achieve. And if that's all I leave, I think it's enough.
That's more than enough. That's more than enough. I mean, if and you think about all the young women that you may not ever even know about, which is, sitting
No,
out there listening to you or watching your video on a screen and going, yeah, I can do that. That's very
they can
cool.
do it. I
Yeah.
want that to become the message. If you are passionate, motivated, have a desire to change your environment, your community, the world, do it. There's nothing stopping you but you. And yeah, there's going to be roadblocks, but that means you have to go through them, under them,
Hmm.
around them, above them, whatever it is to achieve whatever your goal is. And that is like one of my keynote speaking points. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve.
Hmm.
It's up to you to make it or not. Even though there are going to be obstacles put in front of you, get through them, go above them, go
Yeah.
around them. You can do it.
What, um, talk to me a little bit about. I'm really curious about your childhood growing, like your junior high years, your high school years. I assume this passion for science was there, and it was
Yes.
oozing out of you, because it does still. Um, what was it like with your peers? Like, did you get? Was it positive? Was it a resistance? Was it like, why are you being so weird, girl?
That's
Like,
so funny that you asked that question because that's a great question. I hid my knowledge. I hid it.
oh wow.
Most of my friends didn't. I was a cheerleader. I was
Mm,
on the gymnastics team. I ran track. They knew, a lot of my friends knew I was in some harder classes, but I never really talked about my path in science until college. And
huh.
that was where I kind of found myself and I was able to say, you can be great. And as I stated before, it wasn't cool to be nerdy. So I kind of hid my
Mm-hmm.
And I think today we're more accepting of nerdy, and nerdy is actually a cool term because I think people are realizing the nerds are going to probably be your bosses. So maybe it's okay to be a nerd.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one other thing that I think that kids have to kind of work through is that not everybody's going to be in your corner when it comes to
Mm,
you achieving your goal. And like I brought up earlier, I had guidance counselors, even teachers who were not supportive of my path in
right.
science. But then you had that one person. I had a biology teacher. He was great. He walked in one day, we walked into class, and he had a bunch of cups on the table. And every station had a different uh, set of cups in front of it. And in those cups were solutions that were supposedly urine. And our job was to figure out by the analysis of this urine what disease the person had.
Oh
And I have to
wow.
say, it was one of my most impactful experiences in high school because I became the science detective. I
Mm-hmm.
became the person that was going to figure out what this person had so we can cure them. And it was such a powerful experiment. It just lasted a few days in class, but it really gave me the power to know if I could figure this out, I can help this person. He doesn't know. I don't even remember the teacher's name if I'm being
Yeah.
honest, but that was one of the most empowering exercises I ever had in high school. And that was when I was in ninth grade, and I still remember it, and I'm far from ninth grade. But I wish I remembered his name because that assignment was one of the best assignments I've ever experienced as a student in any classroom.
Yeah. It's amazing how those individuals can walk into your life, and they can be so temporary, but they can have such a gigantic impact. And
Yes.
I mean, and that's why I said there's, little girls sitting out there in the audience listening to you, and you're having that same impact. That's got to be so incredibly rewarding. And especially when you see them achieve. Like for you to watch, you have it on your site, like all the awards and all of the colleges that some of these students that you had are ending up in. That's it's just, I don't know. It puts a
It makes
smile
me
on
tear
my
up.
face.
It makes me tear up because I know
Yeah.
it's just a small piece of the big puzzle, but
Yeah.
just to play a small part in their lives and allowing them to see that they can become their own best advocate, and that work that they're going to do is not only going to impact where they go to college but impact the rest of their lives. It's so powerful, and I'm
It's
really thankful.
it's beyond the butterfly effect, like you, it's going to impact the money they make, the person they end up having as a partner for the rest of their life. It's going to, where they live in this country or another. It's like there's so many ramifications
Yes.
to that influence.
Yes.
That,
and that's why I feel like we got to get them younger. Like, I want to work with high school kids. Like, my companies do that. I research corporation and the Hidden Prodigy Project. We are working with high school kids, but we're not working with enough high school kids. Because, again, I get a couple of hundred kids into Ivy League schools, but there's hundreds of millions of kids just in the U.S. alone that I wish that I could reach. And we're working on that. We're going to leverage AI. We're going to leverage technology to impact more kids because we have to. I think that a lot of the problems we're currently facing in the world is because of a lack of understanding of advocacy for themselves and empowering them to make small changes in their communities and in their high schools and when they get to college. And like you said, it's not going to be a one-off. This is going to affect their community forever. It's going to affect them, their relationships. And I love that you said that because these women are now empowered to choose better mates. And these men, the boys that I work with, are empowered to help their daughters and help their sons to become better humans. It's not just about the research project. It's about all of the tools. Like I even showed in my talk for the NAAEE that I have a student who is not a scientist that used his research training to become a phenomenal entrepreneur. And he said, he's like, Dr. McCalla, I want my daughter, she just literally turned 1, to work with you. And I'm like, your daughter's 1, she has some time. But he was laughing with me and joking with me about it. And he was saying, he said the tools and how you empowered me, I need my daughter to see. And I'm like, saying to him, you have the power now. You don't need me to empower her. You're going to do it because you have the tools. So kudos to you bringing that up. It's bigger than just me working with kids on bio projects, environmental science projects. It's on shifting how they think. That's my biggest win. It's changing how the kids think.
Yeah. And that's, you brought it up actually, you were talking about looking at perspectives and learning to know that what you read here, you need to also look where's the other side of that coin so that you have a balanced perspective so that you can ask the real questions. And that's what science is all about, but that's what life is all about.
Yes. Everybody says, I post, I have an ME or whatever. And I'm like, that's just one part of my story. The bigger parts of my story are the parts that you don't see visually. Yeah. It's how I've changed as a human being, how I work with people to help them become better human beings. And if you look at one person and see one thing and only that one thing, you're truly missing who they are.
Yeah. Serena, we're almost out of time. And for the past year, I've done another podcast for NAAEE, and it's called The World We Want. And at the end of that podcast, with amazing people like yourself, I always ask, what is the world you want? But I want to ask that of you in two ways. What is the world you want, Serena wants? And what is the world you want for your students? We talked about a lot of it anyway, but can you put it in
the world I want is a world where people see other people as similar as we are to one another. We are 99.9% the same. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. Our genome comprises 99% of the same information. Why are we so narrow focused on that section that's not the same? I wish that we realize that when we walk in love and in understanding and in equity and forgiveness and grace, that we make the world a better place. What I want for my students is much of the same, that we're not here to make money. We're not here for fame. We're not here for temporary things that when we die, people will forget. We're here to make real impact, meaning that when I'm no longer here, when they're no longer here, people are still going to remember us because of the personal impact we've made in their hearts, in their minds. If I can encourage my students to become those kind of humans, I think all the rest of it, the comfortable life, the happiness, the love, it's all going to come. It's really starts with the small parts.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. It's really, I hope not only that everyone at NAAEE at the conference gets to see this, but I hope that we can find a way to get it out to even a bigger audience. Your words are really powerful and wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you. And I really want to say thank you to NAAEE because I didn't even know that the audience was going to be as phenomenal as it was. And they lifted my spirits, because sometimes I need to be lifted up too. And they lifted up my spirits, and I'm really thankful that there's still a bunch of great educators out there that care about the world.
Yeah, it really is a community that's pretty amazing. I was fortunate to be at the live conference last year in Pittsburgh during the elections, and to have a community gathered around one another to share that kind of love and support. It was a pretty amazing time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you felt it as well.
I
Thank
did.
you.
Thank you.